Hello, and welcome to Rough Edges. I'm your host, Sarah Fox. In this podcast, I will guide you through my faith and mental health journey to dispel the stigma surrounding mental illness and to create a voice for those who wish to discover more about these topics. This podcast will not only shed light on mental health issues, but will also reveal the intersection between faith and mental illness. I pray that these themes will bring growth and healing to our communities. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Rough Edges. I am so excited about this bonus episode because today I'm going to be reviewing The Batman. The Batman was directed by Matt Reeves, and it follows a murder mystery where Batman has to uncover the murders of prominent leaders in Gotham. And so my initial thoughts and reactions leaving the theater, I got to see it on March 1st at an early fan screening. I was in awe of this film. It was everything that I've ever wanted and more. It exceeded my expectations on such a high level, and it also just made me very emotional and overwhelmed with joy. I was just so impressed with all of the performances in the movie, the storyline, and the twists and turns that the audience took while engaging with this story. And it was amazing. So the plot and the tone of this movie, it is a detective story. So it's set in the kind of film noir type of storyline and is also structured as a crime thriller. And this tone is pretty gritty, it's dark, it's very disturbing at some parts. This is PG-13, so I suggest that young children, please do not take your young children to see this movie because it is dark, it is disturbing, it is gritty, it is gripping. It is a very dark tale, and it is also a mystery. It's a murder mystery, but it's not in the traditional sense of a whodunit murder mystery because we already know who is committing these acts of violence against Gotham's elite. We know it's the Riddler. It's been seen in the trailers. It's even been seen in a lot of the marketing. We know who the big bad is, but at the same time, we're trying to uncover what his plan is, what his master plan is. And there lies the mystery that Batman has to solve. And so we get this dark take on the Dark Knight in this gritty crime thriller. And it really explores Gotham's underbelly and the underworld that surrounds the city. And there are three themes within this movie. The themes are vengeance, justice, and fear. So with vengeance, it's really about how Batman uses vengeance as a tool to apprehend the criminals of Gotham and to show that he is Gotham's protector. He wants to have an effect on the city. He wants people to know that he is coming after them if they are doing wrong or causing fear of innocent civilians. And so that is the first thing that Batman uses to identify himself. He literally tells a criminal, "I'm vengeance." And so with that theme, he's really trying to move and evolve from using vengeance into becoming a symbol of hope for the people of Gotham. And that's where the theme of justice comes in. So justice is really at the forefront of this film. And Riddler, he uses his own version of justice to bring about a kind of revolutionized revival, if you will, about the people of Gotham and how their city is dominated by corrupt officials. And so the Riddler wants to use justice as a form of bringing the corruption to light. But we know that it's a twisted form of justice because the way that he goes about executing this form of justice is by murdering Gotham's elite. So we have that theme, and we also have fear. So fear is another prominent theme in this film. It's also the driving force that Batman uses as a tool to get the criminals to understand that he is Gotham's protector and that he wants to exact justice on these people, especially since he endured his own form of trauma when his parents, spoiler alert, if you're not familiar with Batman, but his parents were murdered in a dark alley, in Crime Alley, and they experienced an injustice at the hands of a criminal. And so every night when Batman dons the cape and cowl, he is going out there and fighting for what's right and fighting for those who cannot defend themselves. And so he uses fear as one of his motives to go after these criminals and to make them feel the terror and the dread that he felt and others feel when criminals go after other people, especially if they're innocent people. So the fear that Batman uses is really a sort of evolution that he figures out by the end of the film. And without giving too much away, he realizes that he must become a symbol of hope to the people of Gotham so that they can no longer live in fear, so that they can rise up against the criminals. So the cinematography in this movie looks beautiful. Gotham looks like a city and a character all on its own. And you can really get into the depths of Gotham in this film. All of the camera angles, the lighting, just the majesty of this film. It gives it such an elevated feel where it's best experienced in the theater. The landscape of Gotham, the aerial shots of the city is just some of the best cinematography I've seen in a while. And the cinematographer, his name is Greg Fraser. And he was the cinematographer on Dune, a movie that came out last year. And that movie was also incredible. But the cinematography here and the camera angles and the lighting, it gives you that guck and grime of Gotham, but also it gives you those nice like sunset shots and just a beautiful skyline. Especially, one of my favorite silhouettes was with Batman looking over the city of Gotham, and it's just his silhouette right in front of the sunset and the skyline, and it was so beautiful. I mean, every shot in this film was beautifully executed, and the cinematography was amazing. The soundtrack to accompany the movie was also phenomenal. The soundtrack was by Michael Giacchino, and his soundtrack was just amazing. It really immersed you into all the emotions that you were feeling. It immersed you into the story, and Batman's theme was the best theme that I've heard from a Batman movie since The Dark Knight. I mean, Batman's theme was so memorable, so palpable. Every time that music played, you felt his presence on the screen, and it was just incredible. I also love Catwoman's theme. It kind of gives you a femme fatale, if you will. It gives you that mystery and that little, like, the feline elements of her character. It just plays so beautifully. And there are certain scenes where the music just elevates what you're seeing on the screen, and it makes you immersed within the story. Whenever there's an action scene, or whenever there is an emotional scene, the music accompanying it is just something that elevates you and it really brings the emotion and the heart behind the film. So let's talk about some of the characters in this movie. All of the characters had a vital role to play in this film. None of the characters felt like they were shoehorned in. None of them overstayed their welcome. None of them were underdeveloped. Every character that was brought on the screen had an important part to play in the story itself. And so the supporting characters are Alfred, played by Andy Serkis. So Alfred, he is Bruce Wayne's butler and a father figure. But in this movie, his role is a little bit different. He tries to be a father figure, but their relationship is a little bit strained. And Alfred, Andy Serkis, he really brings a lot of the emotion and the heart in the film. His character is really somewhat of a father figure to Bruce, but he also tries to bring Bruce out of his dark pit. And I just loved Andy Serkis in this movie. I wish we had more scenes with Alfred because he was just such a vital part of Bruce's upbringing and his training and so much of how his identity was shaped. It was just a pity that he didn't have more scenes. Colin Farrell as the Penguin was unrecognizable. He really disappeared into this role, and you could tell that he had a lot of fun with this role. Colin Farrell as the Penguin, or Oswald Cobblepot, he works at the Iceberg Lounge, which is a club in Gotham, and he really interacts with a lot of Gotham's underworld, and he brought a lot of comedy, he brought a lot of emotion, and he also brought a pivotal point in the film where it was at the turning point, and he did something where I was like, I want to see more of this character. He didn't have a lot of screen time, but when he was on screen, he blew me away. His performance was phenomenal. You also have Carmine Falcone, who is played by John Turturro. And Carmine Falcone, I'm not going to go into too much of the role that his character plays in the movie, but he was also phenomenal. I bought him as a mob boss. This psychological look at the character, I think Matt Reeves did a phenomenal job in showing just how deep trauma can be and just how gruesome trauma can be. And I feel like Robert Pattinson's performance as Bruce Wayne really dives into the traumatic nature of what he witnessed as a young boy. Witnessing your parents getting gunned down in an alley is not something that we can all walk away from and be the same. So Bruce's war on crime through the Batman is really just him trying to cope with all of these psychological aspects of his character. And I want to bring this to light in this review because I run a mental health podcast, but it's also something that's interesting to me because when you look at the psychology of this character, you can tell that he's damaged and you can tell that his soul is bruised and tormented and just having that defeatist outlook on life where the only way that he can make an impact is to make war and exact revenge on the people who essentially killed his parents. Every criminal that he sees the person that killed his parents. And so he's trying to rectify those wrongs. And every night he goes out there and risks his life, not only for the city, but so that he could avenge his parents. And another thing that I found interesting was sort of different for this character and this iteration of Batman is that his family history also had a history of mental illness. I'm not going to get into spoilers about who has the mental illness. You're going to have to see the movie to actually figure that out. But it sort of touches on the fact that Batman has a lot of issues, and his family also has a lot of issues. And so I appreciate Matt Reeves' take on this Batman to show more of that psychological struggle that he goes through every single night. And so I am happy with that iteration of Batman. So while it may not be everybody's cup of tea, I understand that you're looking for the rich billionaire playboy as some Batman fans would want, but I encourage you to give this a chance because it shows the reality of someone like Bruce Wayne going out there every night and not seeing his work come to fruition and not seeing himself have an effect. That can really take a mental toll on somebody. It can really just destroy your spirit if you allow it to. But to see that Bruce went through so much trauma and is trying to prevent that trauma from happening to other people, it just shows that he is not only working on getting his coping mechanisms in order to help with this trauma, but he is also having a little bit of a chip on his shoulder and trying to make war on these criminals so that he can prevent that from happening to anybody else. And that's one of the reasons why I love Batman, because he not only takes his trauma and does it in a way that makes it something good or have a good outcome, he also is looking out for the benefit of other people while not compromising his morals in the process. So that's why I love Batman. And I'm so happy that Matt Reeves dived into the psychology of this character. So I'm going to get into some downsides of the film, because I'm not going to say that this is a perfect movie. By no means, it's not a perfect movie. But there are some things that may be a drawback to some people. And it was definitely a drawback for me. The movie's runtime. So the movie is almost 3 hours long. And I know a lot of people may not have the time to sit there for 3 hours. There are certain parts in the film where it drags on a little bit, or certain scenes linger on for just a little bit too long. And so I feel like if the movie's runtime was 2 hours and 30 minutes max, I feel like they would have had a tighter script, a tighter outcome, and the film wouldn't seem like it's droning on a little bit too long. And there's less action than I would have anticipated. Going into the movie, I thought we were going to get a lot of action scenes. There's a good amount of action scenes, but that's not the focal point of the film. It's really a detective story, a film noir story. So it really takes its time in telling the story, and the action scenes aren't really the main focus. So if you're going in looking for a big action-packed superhero film, you're not really going to get that with this movie, because the whole focus is on the detective story. And so that worked for me. I'm not really complaining about that too much, but don't expect too many action scenes in this. Overall, I want to say that The Batman is a phenomenal movie. Is it better than The Dark Knight? In my opinion, it's not better than The Dark Knight, but it's up there with The Dark Knight as one of the greatest Batman movies of all time. And I am so excited about this movie. I saw it twice, and I'm thinking about going for a third time. But I am just in awe of this film. And I'm so happy about Matt Reeves, the cast, the crew, everybody who was working on this film deserves a reward for this, because it was incredible. And so I just want to leave you with a quote by Batman in the film. And it says, vengeance can't change the past. Our scars can destroy us, but they can also give us the strength to endure and the power to fight back. And so I love that quote. And I'm going to leave you with that because that just sums up the entire theme of the movie. And I just want to say that this movie is worth seeing in theaters. So get out there, go support this film because it is definitely worth your time and it was definitely worth the wait. Tune in next time for all new empowering episodes on Rough Edges. Thank you for listening to Rough Edges. Feel free to follow this podcast on Instagram at rough.edges.podcast or visit my blog at sarahifox.com. If you have any questions or further suggestions on how to make this podcast grow, you can email at rough.edges.podcast@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening and have a wonderful day.